Welcome to the podcast, Organized Mayhem. We're coming to you from 110 South 11th Street, which is the home of Morea and the Rap Shack. And we are here to talk to you about all things Philadelphia restaurant business and everything in between. I'm Cammie, here with my brother Scott and my friend John Lupa. There we go. Hi, welcome to the podcast. My name is Cammie, and I am here with my typical friends.
John Lupa.
And where are you boys located?
We are at Morea, 110 South 11th Street, right across from Jefferson Hospital.
Terrific. But today,
yes, connected to Rap Shack.
Direct connection to Rap Shack.
12 South 11th Street.
But today is a very special day because we joined here by our very esteemed guest. His name is Al Paris. Al Paris, believe it or not, you don't know me. You think you just met me right now, but peripherally, you've been in my life for a very long time. I've been very lucky to dine at your restaurants since I was a kid until now. And in talking to my brother, who got into the restaurant business and has always respected you as somebody, as a mentor and somebody who has certainly longevity in the business, told me that he would be available to talk to today to the podcast. And I would love to hear a little bit about your journey in the restaurant business, but also what you're doing now. So please welcome Al Paris.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So my journey?
Give it to me.
Boy. Wow, that's a long journey. I was 54 years in the kitchen. Started on a Mother's Day.
Weird because you're 40, no older than 40. So I don't know how that is, but okay.
But I started on a Mother's Day at the Coach Inn back in Fort Washington in 1967. Yeah, that was awesome. 850 covers. 4 o'clock in the morning, we're playing softball with the baked potatoes, and I said I love this business.
You did.
So
what drew you to this? Was it the people? Was it the food? Was it the music?
Everything, the excitement, the pressure, the noise, the smells. I mean, the times were different back then in the kitchen. Everybody was from Europe. They were not kids. They were professionals off cruise lines, and most European and German chef. And it was awesome. But I went from there to California after I'd been in kitchens a few years, opened up Lily's sous chef. Then I was in California 11 years, did a stint in Napa Valley for 4 years. That was really, really formed my culinary repertoire, was Napa Valley. Came back and opened up Pomodoro with Neil Stein, a legend in the local area. He was the most amazing cheerleader I've ever worked with. And I was with Spectrum Foods in California, which was really respectful. And then came back, and Neil was at least at that level of an operator. He was an amazing individual. After Pomodoro, I started on the trek of doing my own restaurants, of which there were 13 over the course of my career.
Wow.
Beginning with Circa.
I remember Circa.
It was a restaurant bar and dance club, cleared the tables after we had, I had really wonderful cuisine, new American cuisine. Bocuse was there. Perrier was a regular customer. We had a good time. And then at 10 o'clock, we cleared the tables and the tablecloths, and it became a dance club with Josh Wink and all the great Philadelphia legendary DJs, and had a great time. One of the stories there was we had just opened, and it was in February, and it was a snowstorm, and we had a line out the door to get into the restaurant, because if you got into the restaurant, you didn't need to pay a cover for the dance club. And the dance club was pretty legendary also. So somebody sent us a bill for frostbite that they got and waiting in line, and we hung it up on the wall, and it was like our big claim to fame as operators.
What was the bill?
For their doctor bill.
How much?
I forget what it was, but it was the ultimate compliment.
That's amazing.
So can I tell you, first of all, there's a lot to unpack in that, even that little bit. First of all, I was there at Circa, definitely there when it was a nightclub.
You're not old enough.
I am too. And
Thanksgiving.
I've been there, was there.
Oh yeah, that was a big night.
Yep, for sure was a bit. That's exactly what I would be there. But the reason why frostbite, and I can attest to this, and I watched my daughters who were going out of age themselves is that, you don't wear coats, like you're ready to go, you're dressed in your hottest gear and you're waiting in line. Now, I'd like to say I never had to wait in line, but who knows? And, you're going to these great restaurants. But one of the things that I can say is I do believe restaurants all start at the top, right? So the vibe is at the top and then it circles down. So I can say, even though that I don't know you, it had a great vibe.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you about vibe. One of my skill sets is brand distinction.
Okay.
And there is a story, and the story needs to be real, and you need to be able to drive it home. And for every one of my businesses I've ever done, I wrote a story. And the story was about a patron and who they met when they walked in, and the food they had, and the colors on the wall, and the top on the bar, and the surfaces, and the sign, and the emotions that it elicited in them, and how they arrived, and how they left, and whether they went on to marry someone they met that night, and the champagne they had. And I would take that story to my designer, and I would work the finishes. I would take that story as I built my menus, and that I would personify that flavor into my food, and it made a cohesive story. And then I would take that story and I would run all my onboarding and then my training through the story. So we had a crystal ball to look into, right?
That is so cool.
When we opened. So they say you have to have a story, you have to have a culture.
Yep.
Well, you need to be able to be clear with the story and the culture, or it won't come to life. So the idea of creating space and then giving it a flavor, which is literally your food, and then giving it a sound, which is literally your surfaces and the music you play, right? And giving it a look, which is 3-directional light. I mean, these are not metaphors.
Yeah.
You bring this into reality. You manifest this. And that is the real excitement in the hospitality industry.
All right, I have a million follow-up questions because I'm thinking about Circa, right? So when you're talking about that, so if I'm picturing the person that you were referring to at Circa, like you inventing this person, I'm thinking young, beautiful woman, sexy.
Yes. And we had a church, what do you call that, where the priest talks from?
Altar.
It wasn't an altar. It was a pulpit. And we hired tall models from a modeling agency to be hosts. So they were looking down from 9 feet when you came up for your reservation. So right away there was drama. there was a granular nuance of excitement and vertigo. And I put that into my next restaurant, Rococo.
Right, I remember Rococo.
Space that changes the breadth of scale for the breadth of human scale, right? It makes people feel a little uneasy, right? Because it wakes you up and it gets you engaged in what's going on. It heightens your senses. It's the same thing that they do in New Orleans with Alenia when they give you something free. It heightens the senses. Or any amusé, right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing when you remove a hostess stand and you have somebody receive you without something in between you, and you actually have this feeling of their presence, and they get almost personal with you when they walk you to your table, and that personal care and that feeling that elicits. These are all things that are beyond the script, that are below the story, that make the story come to life.
And you're not even, what I love, you haven't even mentioned food. So I'm still talking about when you say vibe, and I love how you're setting the stage because it's the vibe, but in that little bit, you're talking about lighting, which I think is so important. Lighting is huge. I am somebody who likes, you want it to be dark where it's sexy, but not so dark where you can't read a menu.
Yeah, this lighting is not making me look sexy.
I do.
You look okay.
Let me tell you, you look great. And, I actually think Scott does a great job with lighting. I'm a stickler for lighting. And I think music is the other thing. I'm somebody who loves music.
Yes.
But there's different music that I want to enjoy when I'm eating and enjoying than when I'm dancing.
That's right.
So so you're talking about this experience, and I remember it very well, is that, I would go for dinner, so I would avoid the lines, and then the changeover happens, right? And then this, all of a sudden, I don't remember though, either music. So I do remember the feeling and the vibe, but I don't remember how detailed were you and how involved were you in musical selection?
Well, I mean, my partners had Club Zero. So they had all the connections to all the great DJs in Philadelphia. And let's just say I boldly go wherever you want to go.
Okay.
So we gave them a lot of breath to do whatever they wanted. And it was like when you came to Circa, you didn't have to stick to any agenda. You could go as edgy as you'd like, right?
Got it.
And it's almost like that restaurant bar has carried into fine dining these days. There's Michelin star restaurants that are actually pretty darn casual,
Yes,
particularly globally. But you got to have that vibe.
for sure.
You know, all of a sudden, it starts that vibe, that honesty, that truth, the transcendental, the first principles, right? There's first principles that are going to carry through my entire discussion, and it has to do with restaurants and hospitality, but they're truth, beauty, goodness, and unity. These were here before we languaged.
Right.
And if you can walk into a place and feel the unity, and you can feel the goodness, and you can see and touch the beauty, right? And you know that everybody there is truthfully engaged, you're 99% of the way there. You'll actually have forgiveness.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Now, so when you're talking about that, yes, that's your vibe. From what I gather, you found the right people and then are giving them the opportunity to flex their talent and their skills and giving them leeway with the music. But then you have what we talk about a lot on the podcast is staffing, right? Like, so, you're going to be staffing this, and I agree with you. Every person is important, from the bus boy to, the person who's the hostess to everybody making, being part of that team. And you're establishing this winning team of truth, beauty, and kindness.
Goodness. And truth, beauty, goodness, and unity.
And I want to talk about how we find those things.
I didn't come up with these. Aristotle actually wrote these down.
Yeah, but you're still, there's lots of people, philosophers who can say what's important in a restaurant, but you're picking those.
Yes.
And do you feel like you're deciding, like, okay, so let's go back to hiring. So you know that you want to hire someone and they come in for the interview. Are you somebody who, when you're asking questions, are you trying to discern that from them? Do you have a good gut instinct? Like, how do you go about hiring?
Well, instinct is great, but it's almost like you can't just have a great idea and expect the great idea to come into reality. You can't just have intuition and expect that to win the day. I mean, you may have intuition about somebody, but there's different players in the play, right?
Yes.
And it depends on what you're hiring for. I may not need the most gregarious person to be my first cook. I may need them to be my sous chef because they need to be persuasive. And cooking is not a recipe, it's a philosophy. And I need somebody a little deeper than just a mechanic, right? So my host is going to be different than my bookkeeper, is going to be different than my bartender, is going to be different than my busboy, is going to be different than my hostess, right? And there's certain things, and you want it to gel at the end of the day. So the overall philosophy has to carry through the DNA of everyone there.
Yep.
But
everyone's got to still dance together, especially in a kitchen.
Yes, but they have their own mastery, right?
Right.
But that was born in them. I'm just letting them do it, right? It's like, if Scott is a great employee for me and he works at night and he's the best employee I have and everybody wants to see him, I'm kind of hands off, but I gave him an environment for him to flourish.
Right.
Now in the daytime, he might be a horrible employee at another location because somebody's up his keister, micromanaging him, not letting him express himself, and he's unhappy, and that means he's unaware because he's protective. And he's trying just not to get in trouble. So all I can do as a leader is give people an environment to magnify who they already are, right? Once they understand the story. So the onboarding process is really about, do they like people? Do they have a general understanding of why they're there? Because money isn't enough. Right. It isn't even nearly enough, actually. The first challenge that comes along, you're going to associate it to how much you're making in the next 10 minutes to endure this stress. You'll just walk, right? There's more turnover than COVID. Yeah. I mean, it's like the turnover is a global virus.
Yeah.
There's no meaning and purpose to anyone's existence. And that's been going on since the 80s, right? When money was free flowing.
I don't want to interrupt, but one of the things that different from like the 80s and the 90s though, or when I first got into business in the early 2000s, is that like there were lifers in the business. People, this is what I do. Now it's a lot more, hey, I'm here just to make a quick dollar, or I'm here to get through school and then I'm doing something else. I mean, I find that issue all the time. We don't have, I mean, I have a few cooks, chefs that have been with me for a while, but a lot of them are just, hey, I'm here for a quick little time, get through school, and I'm out. So it's not like, it's a lot different. In COVID, I was laughing when they were talking about the host and the bookkeeper and you have this manager and that manager. During COVID, it was me and him, and we would be bartending, cooking, managing at the same time.
And hanging plexiglass.
Yes, hanging plexiglass. So it's like the times have like changed. I think they're starting to get back to people wanting to work again, but they're also not willing to jump ship, I think, a lot faster than they used to. Instead of, building that environment is great, but I also think, and we need to do a better job. I always say this, of building an environment that people thrive in, but they're also willing to jump ship a lot faster than I've ever seen before. It used to be, I always used to say, if they had a bad month, I'd hear complaints and I need to make more money, this and that. If they have a bad
shift,
first 4-hour shift,
yeah,
they're willing to leave. And it has gone so fast to Al's point. It's like you're trying to build a culture, build a philosophy, and build clientele as well at the same time. But everyone's a little bit more fickle these days and ready to jump.
But if I just want to interject, like I think that's true. I think that we are in a reality, and I see it in matchmaking, right? Like that we are fickle. So like if you set somebody up on a date and things are going great and things are wonderful and then all of a sudden there's a glitch, people are a lot like, oh, do you have anyone else for me? Do you have anyone else for me? Like I think that we give up a little faster. However, I do believe as much as things have changed, we're still human beings that want to belong and want to be part of something and want to feel special. And when you go in it at a place where Al was talking about, it was, okay, if I'm designing a restaurant or designing experience and I have this person in mind, right? Like we have a person in mind. Well, that person has feelings, and that person, we're talking about that person who has these flaws that are today's flaws, that she's impatient or she's eager to change, or the first sign of trouble, she might leave. Whatever that person now that you're building and talking to, if you're really thinking about it and going through it, am I right? Like that you're still able to communicate and build a business, even in this environment that's a happy, harmonious. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to know a secret?
Tell me. Although we're podcasting, it's not that secret. What is what?
Some of the greatest cuisinaires were orphans in wartime that stumbled upon kitchens and became our greatest icons in the culinary and restaurant world in the history of cuisine, right? I mean, I was a single child, I guess, from a single mother that worked, and I never knew what I was going to do, but it opened up inquiry for me. Nobody was handing me anything, right? If you want to find a great employee, start with someone that's a refugee or an ex-con or comes from a broken family.
Has something to lose.
All right? Because it's going to be life or death to them, whether they can find an identity in mastering something that they get some agency from, okay? It needs to be a defining moment for someone to not quit, or it'll just be a pattern throughout their entire life.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that somebody that's entitled can't be shaken out of the pattern. They can, but you got to call them out on it, right? And everybody, even people that don't want discipline, want the truth. Right.
Want to belong. I think wanting to belong to something bigger than themselves is a human need.
And you can't belong if it's actually a thin piece of paper that's just bullshit. It's a name on a window that the leader doesn't embody and says this is who we are, and then in the actions you see that does not exist. If you are actually saying what you are and who you are clearly, and then when you are challenged, you reflect those things honestly, people will respect you, right? And they will want what you have, which is authenticity and integrity, right? And you can be very honest with them because they understand that you care. you care enough to do the right thing yourself, right? And if you don't care enough to do the right thing yourself, why should they listen to you? So the idea is you have to model passion,
For sure.
right? And you have to have a need. And it isn't just making money. Money's awesome.
Yeah.
Look, don't get me wrong, but it needs to come in the light of, I would do this anyway.
100%.
Because this is something I'm actually making my mark here.
Yep.
Right? This is why I was born, you know?
So,
And the other thing is nothing lasts forever. So you have to make memories as memories are being made. So you need to let people know how urgent tonight's service is,
yeah.
because it'll never be again. And you tether that to a story about a service you went through 20 years ago, right? And that has so much meaning now and weight and value based on the emotion infusing into this moment that you'll never forget. It's so important. And if you can bring that to every service, well, there you have it.
I love
I
that.
don't care what you are, what business it is. I
love
don't care
that.
if it's just you and your family coming around a table. If you can give that sense of urgency and that sense of importance to this very moment, which the hospitality industry does, right? We do that.
So
We
what
also are responsible for training, and I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to get this last point out.
yeah, please.
We're also responsible for training the most untrained labor in the entire country, if not the world. People will come in with their heart in their hands, right? Bright-eyed, and we will take them from that position, right? And they can wind up owning the business.
I love that.
No other business does that.
Yep.
Well, not to the extent that we do.
Because you can get a master's degree on the job.
Yep.
But one of the things that I was going to say, and I love that I'm somebody who's a rose-colored glass person, right? I have a tendency to be overly optimistic, and I really love people, and that in some way, but sometimes in my life that has backfired, and especially when I'm looking in a restaurant business, which is different than other businesses. What makes it a little bit different is alcohol. Is because you're in an industry where it's sexy, it's fun, and there's food, but there's also drinking. And one of the things we've addressed on the podcast is, okay, so we have this fun environment that also has to do with a bar, and employees are going to drink, and our customers are going to drink, and we want to provide a fun experience. How do we set the boundaries? For us rose-colored glasses people, like, how do we set boundaries? How do we still make it where people are loving this spot? And even our people who work here don't want to leave. They're having so much fun here. But how do we make it so then we don't cross a line of making things?
People hate boundaries.
I know.
Like it's not natural to give people boundaries. It's like a skier. You go, don't hit the tree. And all they see is trees, right? It's like you can't have the drink, and all they see is the alcohol.
There's a reality to the alcohol.
There's a reality, but there's also a reality in how you frame a negative part of the business.
Give it to me. How would you frame it?
Well, you frame it by framing the positive part of the business.
Okay.
You frame it by letting someone know the potential that is innate in them, by giving them the methodology in which to build their awareness and capacity. So the dance within a room, if they're 100% on, is some of the most euphoric moments they'll ever have in their life.
Right.
Right. And all of that negates alcohol, what I just said. But I didn't put one boundary. I made it boundless. Right. So if you put the standards at that level of awareness and capacity in order to be that connected to the clientele and your coworker, where in that conversation would there be an ability to be inebriated?
I think from my perspective, Cammie, some of the best moments ever are after Scott and I just got killed all day. We had 2 chefs call out. We were bartenders. We were all this. And then the restaurant closes and you sit down and you pour that one little drink. You just sit there and laugh. And you say, my God, can you believe we just
can't
made
believe
it
that
through
just
that?
happened.
Like,
Wow.
I've had it with the chefs before where we're cracking a Corona at 12:50. It's taking us 2 hours to clean up. The restaurant was a disaster. And you're just looking at each other, sweat's dripping down your face. And you go, guys, we did it. And there's something so like the camaraderie there is unbelievable. But to Al's point, you know what? It's not fun if you're doing it during the shift. It's not fun if you got a guy who's drinking or anything. But that one moment, if everybody can control themselves,
You can
it's one of the
control
best
yourself and
moments in life.
Getting, as they say, getting out of the weeds in the restaurant
Oh my
business.
God.
Is the most-
Orgasmic.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's unbelievable.
So when you think that hell's breaking loose and you're falling down, and then you pick yourself up and do a great shift, that's a great feeling.
It's one of the best feelings in the world.
When you think you're booked solid, and then your host, even though you told her not to see anybody else,
It's
all of a
right
sudden
at the wrong seat.
starts seating a 5 top, a 7 top,
Yeah.
and a 10 top, and then the reservations are still coming in, which happened like a week ago
Yes.
over here. And you're like, let's just do it.
We
Put
gotta do
put
it.
our heads down and do it. Do great service, great. Do, as Al just said, do a great story, even though the story is we're in the weeds and how we're going to get out of it, but they don't need to know it. But that's the
The camaraderie there.
that's the business when everyone at the end of the night is just looking at each other like,
Can't believe we made it.
that was
It was war.
that could have been
That
this.
is what I find unusual about the restaurant business, right? Like, it's certainly not a corporate America where there's a handbook saying like you can only do this here and here, and you can only. And I think to your point, Al, is that in a restaurant business you can have, not that you can't be free in the corporate environment, but there are more restrictions. In a bar restaurant, it is a little bit looser. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't know if loose for me is the right word, because there's an aspect of having fun, but there's also an aspect, if people are going to weigh, the old justice scale, if they're going to say it's more important to me to be personally entertained and inebriated than it is for me to be there and have a sense of duty for the people that I have honest hospitality for, and my coworkers depend on me. I don't know if that's loose as much as it is, let me just say ignorant. Let me say selfish.
Yeah.
Let me say uninformed. Let me say short-sighted, I mean, I know that, look, you don't have to tell me. I don't need to go down this route, but I did stop drinking at 52 for a reason that I almost stopped breathing, right?
Mhm.
I had a motorcycle accident.
Oh my God.
I was 12 more years in the business, but it knocked the taste right out of my mouth. But I still cooked with Pinot Noir, and I smelled it and put it across my palate. I still tried local gins and things, but they never passed my throat. But I needed to do, from a chef and an owner, what I did, treating the grape as fruit and the beverage as a sour, right? And I was totally part of that. But I didn't drink the same after that, right? Because the risk and benefit columns came up real clear to me
Mhm.
when I woke up in the emergency room. But I still had really successful bars, and I still poured heavy. So does this make any sense?
It makes sense. I think when I was talking about loose, I was more talking about the difference between an environment of a bar and a restaurant. And then if I was working at Comcast as somebody who was
Oh, okay.
filing papers, and that there is an inherent,
Okay.
even like a sexually charged atmosphere, as it should be in a restaurant. Because if you're building if we're having a restaurant and the girl that is the restaurant is sexy, there's a sexiness about the
Well, I
restaurant.
didn't stop doing that.
Yeah.
But I am married 36 years, so
God bless.
I was able to kind of keep my eye on the ball, as it were.
Yep.
Yeah, but I really don't see that it's a problem, except for the person that
The problem.
doesn't understand why they're there. Let's just say that. They don't understand why they're there. And that's our fault, right? I've helped people, rehabilitate at work. But still, we are a entity, the essence of which is to celebrate life. And alcohol is celebratory. Spirits in itself, by definition,
As is food.
as is food. So, let's just understand what the nature of things are. I lecture at Temple Fox School of Business. One of the biggest insights are, what's the nature of money? What's the nature of negotiation? What's the nature of power versus force? What's the nature of leadership? You got to understand beyond the word, there's more to be said than just I'm drunk.
Right.
I'm detached. I'm hurting. I'm not able to do what I'm meant to do. I mean, there's that, and there's more to be said for sexual harassment too. That's holding power over someone, diminishing their, their presence. There's all kinds of things that people don't speak of or understand when these inadequacies occur, right? And they need to be, some things are just plain terminable.
Yeah.
But hopefully you're aware enough as an operator what certain people are prone to. You could tell by the bartenders looking at your service. You could tell how the server, how they hang out and they get that fourth drink after their shift. I mean, hopefully we know these things. We've done our homework, right? And at that point, we let people know what they're in danger of. We keep them inside the rails in a caring way before we have to take them out of the rails in an uncaring way, which is, I got to put my business first. You're out.
You're out. I mean, I think that what you're talking about, which I just love, and is the overall theme, is that when you start off, that you're not just hiring someone, but you're giving someone purpose and giving someone belonging. It's very different hire than I'm hiring a waitress or I'm hiring a bartender. And I think that's a beautiful way to start a relationship, a work relationship with someone.
Yeah, if the care isn't there, you'll get no commitment.
Yep. Yep. And I think as much as I said before, as things stay the same and people are a little bit more fickle or whatever, I think that we do have a natural human desire to belong and have purpose. And if you're the employer who's granting that and giving that and building someone, then you are going to have a different kind of employee and a different kind of relationship. And what I love about this conversation, I think we've been talking for about a half an hour. We've been talking about the restaurant business. And I don't think we've talked about one thing about food.
I don't think so.
What do you want to know about food?
I want to know. Okay, so I want to know what it like. Do you have what's your favorite thing to make? Can we talk about that?
I am so zen when it comes to food. I mean, I do demos at a farm. I do content for a private club, a prepared foods butchery store, a Pennsylvania Dutch outfit. Wherever I play, right? But
Right.
I got to find out the DNA of a place, right? Done some nice work with Scott, and you know what I've done for myself. And, it's really like a peanut butter and jelly at Inverness on the West Coast at sunset with my wife is probably the finest dish I'll ever have, right? Or it could be foie gras, with a sea urchin butter on New Year's Eve for the Shen, right? For a fine dining society. It's like you got to have everything come together. The planet's got to line up for the dish to be right. Starting with the seasons, then what's within 50 miles, then who are you cooking for, right? It's like they have to line up. If they line up, you can't lose. This idea of ingredient-driven cuisine is what it's all about. And it has to be within the cravings of who you're cooking for. And that season drives that, right? I mean, that's what my favorite thing to cook is. Whatever the hell that thing is.
What you're saying too also resonates because it doesn't matter. Because when you're cooking passionately and you're cooking with purpose, so like my kids will say, my mom makes the best bagel. So what does that mean? Like I'm literally defrosting a bagel and toasting it. But when you love someone and you know that like the perfectly toasted bagel with the perfectly balanced butter to bagel ratio, the perfect
No kidding.
We just talked about this yesterday.
Yeah.
that it is like a delicacy, and that when you live life,
Right.
what you're talking about, Al, when you live with purpose and passion and driven to make beautiful things, whether it's a peanut butter jelly sandwich or foie gras, that you are having a life well lived. I cannot tell you how much I'm enjoying this conversation, and I want to get back into food. Scott, tell me real quickly what you were going to say about your buttered bagel.
So yesterday we were just talking about buttered bagels.
Correct.
And he asked me Lupa asked me how much butter do I put on my bagel? And I go,
After the bagel, a hot bagel is closed, and then you go to lift it up. How much butter do you want to see left on the rings?
I want to see just
Minimal piece.
minimum edge, but I want it's soaked in the middle. Like I want it like
Extra soaked.
Yeah, extra soaked. And just I see a little around the edges, a little bit of the butter.
They call that the craggle.
Okay, the craggle end.
The
Yes.
craggle.
Yes.
This little brown, craggly sponge of bagel that's this eviscerated in this sweet butter
Yeah.
as it just lovingly embraces.
Well, he
the
doesn't want the
crunch.
craggle. He wants the whole thing just
I want to
filled
see
with
a
butter.
pat of butter that has almost melted in, so that I know not only is it soaked, but also
Blech.
tasty.
Sorry, not to yuck your yum.
So
Well, he's
delicious.
we just had this conversation yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, this was a big topic. So
How
when you
can
mentioned
nobody talk about cream cheese here?
I'm not a
I'm
We can get into cream cheese.
You know about cream
I have
cheese.
no problem getting into cream cheese, but we're starting up with butter, because I do think it's such a simple thing. But everyone,
I actually have to interject over here about bacon, however, because we fight about bacon all the time. I always want crispy bacon.
Al knows this as somebody who is in the culinary scene. Bacon is now becoming popular as almost less cooked. Before it was always crispy, crispy, crispy. Everyone's now you go and find bacons are undercooked almost, where you taste the fat. You can almost like the gelatinous part of the fat is where a lot of the flavor
That's
is.
right. Well,
Thank
that's
you.
because of people that have made pork belly,
Correct.
right?
Are
Which
going to
is
transfer into that.
now that that David Chang is made famous by overcooking, and I mean the pork belly is uncured bacon,
Right.
and it made that beautiful fat, almost
Oh.
lardo.
Exactly.
It's like it's pretty unctuous, I think
Yes.
is the word. But as far as bacon goes, how about the lardon?
Oh, it's amazing.
The
Didn't we
thick
make that?
cut, almost
We made
like
it
a baton of bacon
Fresh on it.
that is blanched for 30 seconds, dried, and then crisped in its own fat.
Right.
We did that for us.
And inside, yes, of the lardon, inside of the lardon, it's chewy and
It's almost
gelatinous,
marrow-esque. where it's like
marrow-esque. On the outside, it's crispy and
delicious.
smoky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so I've got to ask you, Al, because we've had this conversation. For someone who enjoys life and enjoys food, are you a slow eater or a fast eater?
Well, you could see that I talk too much, right?
No, you're doing great. I've been hanging on
Say
every
a
word.
word when I'm eating.
You
Not
don't say
a word.
not a word.
My wife hates it. I am totally, no matter what I'm eating, that's where I am. Every single bite. And I smell a lot.
Mhm.
That also she doesn't like. What do you smell? Well, I want all of it, right? I'm totally it's the food first with me, right? So I don't eat slow. I eat consciously. I guess that's the answer.
I think that's a great answer. I think it's a great answer because it's someone who is you're present in the experience.
I have a question for you, Al. So we're talking about all these fine cuisines and stuff like that, but what's your
Go-to.
like no, like do you like pizza? Do you like
Chinese food.
Chinese food or chicken fingers? Something basic that's just like, hey, this is what I like.
He likes peanut butter and jelly. That's basic.
I mean, I like everything. It's like I do pizza night with my wife. I'll start the dough today, and then on Friday we have pizza. She's vegan, so I make this bechamel with tapioca flour that melts just like mozzarella, and I use nutritional yeast.
Doesn't sound like my house. at
right
all.
now,
No,
right
it's
up our
like-
alley.
Trust me, it's all.
That's up my alley. That sounds delicious
Pizza.
to me.
Yeah.
And I'm really all over a good burger sometimes. I'm really into variety. Like I'll go in between a purple cauliflower that I have in my raised beds right now. I did a vegan gumbo to like having like an andouille sausage with raclette cheese, right? And this smoky sausage on like a pretzel bread. I mean, it's like, but the reason that I'm still here and kind of healthy is because I never eat the same thing 2 days in a row. Probably not 2 weeks in a row.
So no leftovers for you.
Oh, I have leftovers, but I keep things so clean and I don't pre-mix them most of the time that I can turn them into something else.
Are you a dessert person?
I can be, but only once a week.
Once a week.
I don't
What-
eat dessert every day. I only eat it when I cook for people at the house.
Got it. Do you make your own? Do you bake too?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I had to see.
Al's house
We've
is like a
we've-
museum.
But by the
to
way,
food.
we've
It's
had
unbelievable.
we've gone to Al's house
This is a
for
funny
meetings, and he never told us that
Me
every
and Scott
time
are
we come,
idiots. We're eating at McDonald's before
Yeah.
we go to Al's house.
Yeah.
He's got a 12-course meal waiting for us. And we're
and
like, just smash
and
more Big
we
Macs.
felt bad. We're like not eating any of his food, and we just had like the biggest meal at McDonald's, and I'm just having like a bite or two.
I always felt like we were
Yeah.
so offending you.
Yeah, it happened like twice because I'm like, oh, I'm sure he's not.
No
cooking.
chef
This
wants
is
to cook.
cooked. And the next time we came, there was even a bigger meal, and we what did we eat that time? Probably Chinese food.
Something dumb.
And then
Yeah.
we came over, and he's like, "You're not eating?" I'm like, "Okay, we'll do the best we can."
Well, and then the French omelet turns into a tortilla the next morning,
Right.
or the lemon curd tops another dessert. I mean, it's almost nothing ever goes to waste. I mean, you learn that over years in the kitchen, and some of the most incredibly creative things happen out of utilization, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. Well, that's never, ever more important than in the restaurant business. That's actually where creativity is the most effective.
And it's amazing how, you've been in this business in Philadelphia, which has become a food city. It wasn't always known as a place that was known for its cuisine. And I think now, like, even back when you were talking about the restaurants that you're talking about, really like restaurants that inspired food across the world.
Oh yeah. Well, you got to study geography, history, culture, tradition, the microclimates, everything. Like if you start in Italy, there's like 100 regions, right? Garibaldi brought them together, but they're not really together. You turn a corner, it's different. Same thing in France, same thing in Turkey. I mean, it's the way it is. So you got to start, with the grandmoms, and where they lived, and whether they were, the grandmother of an entrepreneur or a farmer, right? There's haute cuisine in every country. There's bourgeoisie, right? And then there's also peasant cuisine that always, always, always informs the haute cuisine. The things you're talking about with the bagel, we do that in Michelin level restaurants. We bring those techniques and those memories from your childhood into amazingly deconstructed things with the same crunch and nuance and layers of flavors and the saltiness. We insinuate what you loved as a child.
Yep.
That's what fine dining is, right? And and we spoke about vegan. It's 90% vegetables. Yeah. And then the protein is hand massaged and perfumed and Mangalese and long hair and heritage breed and with a little bit of smoked Muldoon salt on it, on a beautiful, beautiful seasoned hardwood, and it's like, and sauce making is 80% vegetables, it's like, and then when we finish things, it's barrage and sweet pea tendrils and the little crunches and insinuations also. So really, I don't want to blow it for you guys. There is no fine dining in peasant cuisine. There's just food, right? And just like music that we spoke of earlier, it transcends language. It transcends memory, right? But we engage all of that.
And I love that. And I think that the truth of the matter is right now, no matter how divided our world is, when you talk about something that's universal, sharing a beautiful meal with someone and a beautiful experience with someone and in an elevated way, no matter what restaurant you are, where you're talking about things about purpose and belonging and goodness and good food and memories from childhood, I do believe there is a utopia that happens inside a restaurant. And certainly, Al, with the way that you have, your guidance, people in the city would benefit from your knowledge and, to know how passionate you are when they're going into a restaurant, knowing the intent behind it and the care and the passion and the love that you bring to what you do is really inspiring to me. I absolutely adored our conversation and it makes me a little bit hungry. And I definitely, I would love, first of all, if I come for an invite to your vegan house for a vegan pizza, I'm coming starving. So
my house isn't vegan.
Well, that's
like I said, there's always plenty of vegan options.
I would definitely go for the vegan options, but I think Scott and Lupa, I'm sure you feel the same way, that it really, and I know that you guys have the same passion for Morea and Rap Shack, and I feel it when I go there and your staff, whether you say it outwardly or it's in your actions, the way you feel about your staff and about your customers and about people who come in, and it's respecting the fact that they could be celebrating a great day, or you're across from a hospital and someone came in and they're having a sad moment. I think that you've had all kinds of that, and you honor the people that come into your restaurant. And what a beautiful conversation today. Thank you so much, Al. Thank you, Lupa. Thank you, Scott. Want to hit where we are again one more time, just so you can find us?
Yes. I also want to thank Al for being here today. I hope I'm as passionate as he is today when I'm maybe not out of the business, but maybe not in the daily business every day like I am right now. The passion that you have, it's pretty amazing, and still being able to talk about it. This podcast is definitely different than any podcast we've ever had.
It was beautiful. It was almost philosophical. But
I barely spoke.
Al, I do have a question for you that I'm dying to know.
Yes.
When you met Scott 20 years ago,
Yes.
did you think he'd still be in the business?
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
There was no question.
Wow.
Yeah, there was no question.
Unbelievable.
I mean, passion looks differently.
To different people.
Yes, and from different people.
Yeah.
And I saw it in his eyes.
Wow. Okay. Rock and roll. Guys, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, X, wherever you consume your podcast. Watch us live on YouTube at Organized Mayhem Podcast. This is definitely one of the most philosophical podcasts we've ever done. I
hope that you come back. I would like you to come back, and Scott and Lupa, if he doesn't come back, I would like to know if, like, going into that zone, if you were making Rap Shack and Morea is in a person, like if you were going to design that person and that person is a story and that person is your restaurant, next week, can we talk about who that person is?
I love that idea.
I love that idea too.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, obviously what I like about this podcast that we're doing today is that it makes you think of things in a different way than we ever have, especially on this podcast. Sometimes we're so tired by the time we're doing this podcast. We're beat up already, but this has been an amazing day. So
we're talking in brand distinction language about building an avatar, and that's who you build the business for. Is the avatar, and then then they come walking through the door, and that you communicated in 1,000 different ways that which cannot be said in language.
Yep. And I think that translates to any business. So for anybody who's listening in any business that you're in, to go about your business with that care, devotion, and love. And I think that you're right. You're not thinking about the money, but the money flows from the passion.
love
So
it.
Great conversation. I really appreciate it. Hope everyone's doing well. And that's it for today.
Good job, guys.
That was awesome. Oh my God. I love talking to you. Come back. It was great.
Thanks everyone for joining us today for Organized Mayhem Podcast. Check us out on YouTube, X, our website, rapshackpa.com, and wayofphilly.com for updates. Once again, welcome to the Mayhem.